How does a single message in a group chat end with divorce papers on the courthouse steps? What happens when your own words become evidence and the person you thought you could humiliate turns your performance into your undoing? I should have known better. But sitting in that upscale restaurant on our 8th anniversary, watching Jonah methodically cut his steak while scrolling through lesson plans on his phone, I felt invisible. Completely, utterly invisible. "The salmon's good," I said, trying to catch his attention. He didn't look up. That's when Felix appeared at our table like some kind of divine intervention. Felix Marrow from the non-profit foundation, where I coordinate events, tall, charming, with that easy smile that made everyone at work gravitate toward him. "Lysandra, what a surprise seeing you here." His eyes sparkled with mischief. "Mind if I say hello?" Jonah finally looked up, his jaw tightening slightly. "Felix. Jonah, right? The math teacher." Felix's tone was friendly enough, but there was something underneath it. "Lysandra talks about you all the time at work." I felt a flutter of excitement. Someone actually wanted to talk to me, to see me as more than just a wife going through the motions. "Felix was just telling us about the donor event next week," I said, even though we hadn't been discussing it. "He thinks I should give the welcome speech." "That's nice," Jonah said flatly, returning to his phone. Felix slid into the empty chair beside me without being invited. "You know what? Let me buy you both a drink. It's your anniversary, right?" The next hour flew by in a blur of laughter and attention I hadn't felt in months. Felix hung on my every word, complimented my dress, asked about my work with genuine interest. When he touched my hand while telling a story, I didn't pull away. Jonah sat there like a stone, occasionally glancing up with those quiet, observant eyes that had once made me feel cherished, but now just felt judgmental. "We should get a photo," Felix suggested as the evening wound down. "Document this perfect anniversary dinner." Before I could object, he had his arm around my waist, pulling me close for a selfie. I could smell his cologne, feel the warmth of his body against mine. For just a moment I felt alive again. Jonah's face was carefully blank as he watched this unfold, but I caught the slight tremor in his hands as he reached for his water glass. Later that night, riding high on attention and wine, I opened our friend group chat, Marina, Nate, a few other coworkers and college friends. I posted the photo Felix had taken, the one where his hand rested possessively on my waist, and I was beaming up at him. Then, feeling bold and reckless, I typed, "Had dinner with my wrinkled prune of a husband tonight. Thank God Felix showed up to save the evening." The responses came flooding in. Marina: "Girl." Nate: "Felix looks like he knows how to treat a woman right. Finally, someone who appreciates you." Jonah looks thrilled. I laughed at each message, feeling vindicated. See? Other people could see what I was dealing with. Other people understood that I deserved better than a husband who treated our anniversary dinner like a chore. What I didn't know was that someone in that group chat, someone I trusted, had already taken a screenshot. The next morning, I woke up to 17 missed calls and 43 text messages. "Lysandra, honey, we need to talk." That was from my mother, Rosa. "Did you really post that about Jonah?" Marina sounded worried now, not encouraging like she had the night before. But the message that made my blood run cold was from my coworker, Janet. "The photo's everywhere. It's on Instagram, Twitter, even TikTok. Someone made it into a meme." I grabbed my phone with shaking hands and searched. There it was. Our anniversary photo, but now with captions like, "When your side piece crashes your anniversary dinner," and "This is why your husband doesn't trust you, Karen." The comments were brutal. "Poor guy looks dead inside." "She's literally flirting with another man in front of her husband." "This is so embarrassing for everyone involved. Someone needs to show the husband these screenshots." My stomach dropped. Screenshots. Of course, people had screenshots of the group chat messages. I found Jonah in the kitchen, calmly making coffee and packing his lunch for school. He looked up when I entered, and for a split second, I saw something flash across his face. Hurt, maybe? But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "Did you see?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "See what?" "The photo went viral. It's actually kind of funny." He nodded slowly, stirring sugar into his coffee with mechanical precision. "Funny. People are overreacting. You know how social media is." His calm was unnerving. I'd expected anger, accusations, maybe even a fight. Instead, he was treating me like a stranger making small talk. "Jonah, you're not upset, are you? It was just a silly post." He looked at me then, really looked at me, with those steady brown eyes that had once made me feel like the most important person in the world. "Should I be upset, Lysandra?" The way he said my full name, not Lysa, not Honey, but Lysandra, sent a chill down my spine. "No, of course not. It was harmless." He nodded again and picked up his coffee mug. "I'm sure it was." At work that day, the atmosphere was electric. Half my coworkers were treating me like a celebrity, gathering around my desk to whisper about the viral photo. The other half avoided eye contact entirely. Felix, naturally, was basking in the attention. "Did you see we're famous?" he said, perching on the edge of my desk. "My Instagram followers tripled overnight." "It's insane," I agreed, though something about his excitement made me uncomfortable. "We should do another photo, really give them something to talk about." Before I could respond, my phone buzzed with a text from Jonah. "Working late tonight. Don't wait up." He never worked late. In 8 years of marriage, Jonah had never once stayed at school past 4:30. That evening, I tried calling him twice. Both calls went to voicemail. When he finally came home at nearly 10 o'clock, he went straight to his home office and closed the door. I could hear him in there. The soft clicking of keyboard keys, the whir of the printer, the methodical sound of papers being organized. When I knocked and asked if he wanted dinner, he said he'd already eaten. "Are you working on lesson plans?" I called through the door. "Something like that." The next morning, I found a small notebook on the kitchen counter labeled Household in Jonah's neat handwriting. Inside were meticulous records. Grocery receipts, utility bills, mortgage payments, even a log of who had picked up our daughter Maya from school each day for the past month. "What's this?" I asked, waving the notebook. Jonah glanced up from his coffee. "Just keeping better track of things." "Track of what things?" "Expenses, responsibilities, documentation." That word, documentation, made my skin crawl. "Why do you need to document anything?" He shrugged. "It's good to have records." I wanted to press him further, but my phone was already buzzing with notifications. The group chat was active again, and Felix had posted a video from our work happy hour the previous Friday. A video I didn't even know he'd taken, where I was laughing at something he'd whispered in my ear while Jonah sat silently beside me. "Look what I found in my camera roll," Felix had written. "Some people know how to have fun." The responses were immediate. "Jonah looks done." "This is painful to watch. Someone please put this man out of his misery." But there were other responses too, ones that made me pause. "This isn't funny anymore. I feel bad for their kid." "Lysandra, maybe you should cool it with the posts." I quickly deleted that last comment thread and posted a laughing emoji instead. People were being way too sensitive about this whole thing. What I didn't know was that someone had already forwarded every single screenshot to an email address I wouldn't recognize until much later. The donor event was held at a trendy rooftop venue downtown, the kind of place where everything was designed to look effortlessly elegant and utterly Instagram-worthy. I'd spent weeks planning every detail, and tonight felt like my moment to shine. I wore a red dress that hugged my curves and made me feel powerful. Felix had texted that morning, "Can't wait to see you tonight. Wear something that will drive them crazy." The them presumably meant the internet, since our little viral moment had turned us into minor social media celebrities. Felix had been milking it for all it was worth, posting behind-the-scenes content and building his brand as the charming other man. Jonah arrived exactly on time, wearing his good navy suit and an expression I couldn't quite read. He'd been like this for days, present but distant, polite but cold. "You look nice," he said when he saw me, but his voice was flat. "Thanks, you too." We stood there for a moment, two strangers making conversation at a party. When had we become these people? The evening started well. My welcome speech went perfectly, donors were writing checks, and I felt like I was finally being seen for my professional accomplishments rather than just as someone's wife. Then Felix appeared at my elbow with 2 glasses of champagne. "To the woman who made tonight possible," he said, raising his glass. I glanced around for Jonah and spotted him across the room, talking quietly with his Aunt Lydia. She was gesturing emphatically, clearly upset about something, while Jonah nodded and listened with that patient expression he wore when dealing with difficult students. "He doesn't appreciate what he has," Felix murmured, following my gaze. "It's complicated," I said, but even as I said it, I moved closer to Felix. "It doesn't have to be." When it came time for the toast, I found myself at the microphone again, looking out over the crowd of donors and colleagues. The champagne had made me bold, and the validation of a successful event had gone to my head. "Tonight is about trust," I heard myself saying. "Trust between our foundation and our donors, trust in the work we do, and trust in each other to build something meaningful." As I spoke, Felix moved to stand beside me, his hand settling on the small of my back in a gesture that could have been professional support but felt like so much more. I saw Jonah across the room, watching this unfold with those careful, observant eyes. For just a moment, our gazes met, and I felt a flicker of something. Guilt. Regret. But then Felix's thumb traced a small circle against my spine, and I lost my train of thought entirely. "Trust," I repeated, leaning slightly into Felix's touch, "is everything." The crowd applauded, cameras flashed. Someone was definitely recording video. Later, as the evening wound down, I found myself on the rooftop terrace with Felix and a small group of colleagues. The city sparkled below us, and I felt drunk on success and attention. "Speech was perfect," Nate said, holding up his phone. "Got some great footage for the Foundation's social media." "And some great footage for my personal collection," Felix added with a wink. I should have felt uncomfortable with how public everything had become, but instead, I felt vindicated. Look at me, I thought. Look at how happy I can be when someone actually pays attention to me. My phone buzzed with group chat notifications. Queen behavior at that event. Felix's hand placement, though. Jonah looked like he wanted to disappear. This is getting messy, and I'm here for it. But there were other messages too, private ones. "Rosa, Mom. Honey, I saw the video. We need to talk." "Aunt Lydia. This has gone too far, Lysandra. Think about Maya." I ignored them both and posted a selfie of Felix and me against the city skyline, his arm around my shoulders, both of us glowing with champagne and success. "Perfect night with perfect company," I captioned it. "Some people know how to celebrate life." The likes and comments poured in immediately, but I noticed something else. Jonah had viewed the story. I could see his name in the viewer list, which meant he was watching. Good. Maybe now he'd realize what he was missing. What I didn't notice was the figure across the street, standing in the shadows outside a coffee shop that had closed hours ago. Someone who had been watching the entire event unfold. Someone who had seen every touch, every meaningful glance, every moment of public intimacy. Someone who had been documenting everything. When I got home that night, giddy with success and attention, I found Jonah in his office again. The door was open this time, and I could see him organizing papers into labeled folders. "How was your evening?" he asked without looking up. "Amazing. The event raised more money than we'd hoped." "That's good." I moved closer and saw that the folders were labeled with dates. Tonight's date, the date of our anniversary dinner, the date of the work happy hour. What are you working on? Just organizing some things. What kind of things? He finally looked up at me, and for a moment I saw something in his eyes that made me step back. Not anger, not hurt, but something colder. Something final. Evidence, he said quietly. Before I could ask what he meant, my phone exploded with notifications. The video from tonight had already been posted, shared, and turned into a dozen different memes. Felix and I were trending again, but this time, the comments were different. This woman has no shame. Someone needs to show her husband these videos. How is this man still married to her? Plot twist, he's documenting everything for the divorce. I laughed at that last comment, but the sound came out hollow and forced. Jonah had returned to his paperwork, adding tonight's printed screenshots to a folder marked with today's date. As I watched, he pulled up his calendar and created a new event for next week. Paper drop 16:05. What's happening at 4:05 next Tuesday? I asked. He saved the calendar entry and closed his laptop. Nothing you need to worry about, he said. Yet. The next few days passed in a strange, tense quiet. Jonah went about his routine, teaching his classes, picking up Maya from school, making dinner, grading papers, but it felt like he was sleepwalking through his own life. Meanwhile, my phone continued to buzz with notifications. The rooftop video had spawned a dozen reaction videos, think pieces about modern marriage, and even a parody account called Wrinkled Prune Husband that was gaining thousands of followers daily. Felix was eating up every second of the attention. We should do a podcast interview, he suggested during lunch at work. There's a relationship show that wants to talk to us about modern marriage dynamics. I don't know, I said, though part of me was tempted. Things are weird enough at home. Weird how? I told him about Jonah's folders, the documentation, the mysterious calendar entries. Felix laughed. He's probably just trying to scare you. What's he going to do? Divorce you for being happy? The word divorce sent an unexpected chill through me. He wouldn't do that. Even if he did, you'd be better off. You deserve someone who celebrates you, not someone who treats you like a burden. That evening, I tried to talk to Jonah over dinner. Maya was at my parents' house for the night, so it was just the two of us at our kitchen table, picking at takeout Thai food in silence. Are you happy? I asked suddenly. He looked up from his pad Thai, considering the question seriously. Are you? I asked first. I was, he said carefully. For a long time, I was very happy. The past tense hit me like a slap. And now I'm focused on other things. What other things? Making sure Maya's okay, making sure I'm prepared for whatever comes next. Prepared for what? He set down his fork and looked at me with those steady brown eyes. Lysandra, do you think I'm stupid? The question caught me off guard. What? No, of course not. Do you think I don't see what's happening? Don't understand what you're doing? My heart started racing. I'm not doing anything. You called me a wrinkled prune in front of our friends. You posted photos of yourself with another man on our anniversary. You gave a speech about trust while that same man had his hands on you in front of a room full of people. Each statement was delivered in the same calm, measured tone he used to explain algebra to his students. I was just having fun. You're reading too much into things. Am I? He pulled out his phone and opened Instagram. There, on Felix's story from that very afternoon, was a video of me at work. I was leaning over Felix's desk, laughing at something on his computer screen, my hand resting on his shoulder. I didn't even remember Felix taking that video. When was this posted? I asked. 2 hours ago, while I was picking up our daughter from school. The way he emphasized our daughter made my stomach clench. It's not what it looks like. What does it look like, Lysandra? I opened my mouth to explain, to rationalize, to make him understand that it was all harmless fun, but the words died in my throat. because looking at that video through his eyes, seeing my hand on Felix's shoulder, my body language, my expression, it looked exactly like what it was. "I haven't done anything wrong," I said finally. Jonah nodded slowly. "I know. You do. You haven't technically done anything wrong. You haven't kissed him, haven't slept with him, haven't crossed any lines that would hold up in court." The phrase, "hold up in court," made my blood run cold. "But you've done something else," he continued. "Something worse in a way." "What?" "You've made me a joke. You've turned our marriage into entertainment. You've made our private life public and invited strangers to laugh at me." I wanted to argue, to tell him he was being too sensitive, but there was something in his voice that stopped me. "And the thing is," he said, standing up to clear his plate, "you've documented all of it yourself. Every humiliation, every moment of disrespect, every time you chose to make me look foolish in front of people we know." He paused at the kitchen sink, his back to me. "You've built your own case against yourself, Lysandra, and you posted it all online for the world to see." That night, I lay awake listening to the sounds from his office, the printer running, paper shuffling, the soft clicks of his keyboard. At one point, I heard him on the phone, speaking in low, professional tones to someone about documentation and timeline and custody considerations. When I crept to the door to listen, I heard him say, "Yes, I have everything. Screenshots, videos, financial records, witness statements. It's all organized by date." My hands were shaking as I returned to bed. The next morning, I found a thick folder on the kitchen counter labeled Lysandra Evidence File. Inside were printouts of every group chat message, every social media post, every photo and video from the past month. Each item was dated, labeled, and cross-referenced with a master timeline. There were things in there I'd forgotten about. Casual comments about Jonah being boring, photos where I was clearly more interested in Felix than my husband, even a screenshot of a text conversation where I'd complained to Marina about Jonah's lack of passion. At the bottom of the folder was a single sheet of paper with a calendar entry printed out. Paper drop, Tuesday, 4:05 p.m., courthouse steps. My phone rang. It was my mother. "Lysandra, your father and I need to talk to you." "About what?" "Jonah called us last night." The world seemed to tilt sideways. "He what?" "He wanted us to know that Maya might need some extra support in the coming weeks. He was very respectful about it, very kind, but honey, what have you done?" Sunday dinner at my parents' house had always been a refuge, but this week it felt like a tribunal. Rosa had cooked Jonah's favorite pot roast, and Paul kept offering him beer with the awkward enthusiasm of someone trying to apologize for their daughter's behavior without actually saying the words. Maya sat between us at the table, chattering about her art class and seemingly oblivious to the tension crackling around her. But I caught her glancing between Jonah and me with those perceptive 7-year-old eyes that missed nothing. "Daddy, why are you so quiet lately?" she asked, stabbing a carrot with her fork. "Just thinking about work, sweetheart." "Are you sad?" The question hung in the air like smoke. Everyone at the table went still. "Sometimes grown-ups have things to figure out," Jonah said carefully, "but that's not for you to worry about." "Is it because Mommy's always on her phone now?" Rosa choked slightly on her wine. Paul suddenly became very interested in his mashed potatoes. "Maya, eat your dinner," I said quickly, "but you are always on your phone. And you laugh at it a lot, but not the same way you used to laugh at Daddy's jokes." Out of the mouths of babes, I felt heat creep up my neck. "Your mother has a lot of friends who like to talk to her," Jonah said diplomatically. "Is Felix your friend, Mommy?" The silence that followed was deafening. I could feel everyone's eyes on me, my parents, Jonah, even Maya, waiting for an answer, with the innocent directness of childhood. "Felix is someone I work with," I said finally. "But he's in all your pictures now, and people at school saw the videos and said—" "What people at school?" Jonah's voice was sharp. Maya looked uncertain, sensing she'd said something wrong. "Just some mums. They were talking about the funny videos of Mommy and the man who isn't Daddy. I wanted to disappear into the floor. Jonah's colleagues, Maya's teachers, other parents, they'd all seen the viral videos. They'd all watched me humiliate my husband in public. "Maya, why don't you go play in the backyard?" Rosa suggested gently. After Maya left, the silence stretched until Paul cleared his throat. "Lysandra, I think you need to consider." "Consider what?" I snapped, defensive. "How this looks," he said quietly. "How it affects your family. I haven't done anything wrong. Haven't you?" This came from Jonah, and his tone was so calm it was almost worse than if he'd yelled. "No, I've been having some fun, getting some attention, feeling good about myself for the first time in months. Since when is that a crime?" "It's not a crime," Jonah agreed, "but it has consequences." Rosa leaned forward. "Honey, I've watched those videos. I've seen the comments. People are saying terrible things about your marriage, about Jonah, about you. And Maya is going to see this someday. She's 7. She won't always be 7, Paul said. Someday she'll be old enough to Google her parents' names and find all of this." The thought of Maya, years from now, discovering the viral videos and mocking memes made my stomach turn. "I think," Jonah said quietly, "we should head home." The drive back was silent except for Maya's chatter from the back seat about a butterfly she'd seen in Grandma's garden. When we got home, Jonah went straight to his office while I helped Maya get ready for bed. "Mummy, are you and Daddy getting divorced?" The question hit me like a physical blow. "Why would you ask that?" "Because that's what happened to Emma's parents. First they stopped talking to each other. Then her daddy moved out. Then they got divorced. Daddy and I are just working through some things. Emma said her mommy was always on her phone too before the divorce." I tucked her into bed with a heavy heart, wondering what kind of example I was setting for my daughter. Later that night, I found Jonah in the kitchen, sitting at the table with a cup of tea and a manila folder. "We need to talk," I said. "Do we?" "This has gone far enough. I'll delete the posts. Tell Felix to back off, whatever you want." He looked up at me with those steady brown eyes. "Will you?" "Yes, if that's what it takes." "What it takes for what?" "To fix this. To fix us." He was quiet for a long moment, then opened the folder. Inside were more printouts. Legal documents, forms, official-looking papers with seals and signatures. "Lysandra, do you remember what you said to me the night after our anniversary dinner?" I tried to think back. "I don't remember exactly." "You said I was embarrassing you. You said I was holding you back from being happy. You said you deserved better than a husband who couldn't appreciate how amazing you are." The words came back to me in a rush. I had said all of that, in the heat of the moment, when he'd questioned my friendship with Felix. I was upset. "You were honest," he said. "Maybe for the first time in months, you were completely honest about how you feel about me, about our marriage, about the life we built together." I didn't mean it. "Yes, you did. And you know what? You're right." That stopped me cold. "What?" "You do deserve better than a husband who embarrasses you," he said, and his voice stayed steady, almost gentle, which somehow made it sharper. "And I deserve better than a wife who thinks I'm a wrinkled prune she has to endure." Lysandra sat frozen on the couch, her hands clasped so tightly her knuckles had gone pale. The folder lay on the coffee table between them, like an unexploded device, the kind that doesn't make noise until you touch it. Jonah's fingers rested on it for a second, as if he was saying goodbye to something he'd carried longer than he should have. Then he closed it. The sound of the clasp snapping shut was small, but it echoed in the room. He stood up, smoothing the front of his shirt the way he always did when he was trying to pull himself together. But this wasn't nerves. This was composure. The kind of composure you develop when you've finally accepted you can't save something by bleeding for it. "Tomorrow at 4:05, he said, looking down at her with a calm that made her stomach drop. "You're going to get what you want, Lysandra. Freedom from your embarrassing husband." Her throat worked as she swallowed. What happens at 4:05? You'll find out, Jonah replied. He started toward the stairs, the folder tucked under his arm, like a file he was delivering to court. Halfway to the first step, he paused, and Lysandra's breath caught. She knew that pause. It was the pause before he said something that couldn't be unsaid. For what it's worth, Jonah said quietly, I did love you. Very much. But somewhere along the way, you stopped loving me back, and instead of talking to me about it, instead of trying to work on our marriage, you decided to make me a laughingstock. Jonah, Lysandra's voice cracked, and she stood halfway, as if standing could stop him. He lifted a hand, not aggressive, just final. The saddest part, he continued, is you did it all yourself. Every humiliation, every public embarrassment, every moment that made me look like a fool. You documented it all and posted it online. You built the case against our marriage one screenshot at a time. Lysandra's face flushed hot, then drained pale. Her mouth opened, but the words got trapped behind the truth, because she did remember the harmless posts, the little jokes in the captions, the stories she'd put up for her friends, Jonah's awkward dancing at the charity event, Jonah tripping over his words at the dinner party, Jonah in that unflattering, candid shot that Felix had taken and she'd laughed at before uploading. She'd told herself it was playful. She'd told herself everyone did it. She'd told herself Jonah didn't mind, that he was too slow, too old-fashioned, too grateful to be married to her to ever object. But Jonah had been watching, not helplessly, carefully. He headed upstairs, but at the top step he turned back one last time. The light from the hallway framed him in a way that made him look unfamiliar. Less like the man she'd married, more like someone leaving a burning building without looking back. I hope Felix makes you happy, Lysandra, he said, and there was no sarcasm in it, just a quiet, devastating sincerity. I really do, because after tomorrow, he's going to be all you have left. Then he went upstairs and disappeared into the dark of the second floor. Lysandra stood there alone in the living room, the house suddenly too quiet, too clean, too full of the life they'd built and the ruin she'd helped create. She stared at the folder on the coffee table like it might open by itself and explain what 4:05 meant. Her phone lay beside her on the cushion, screen still lit from the last message Felix had sent, some casual line about meeting later, a heart emoji, a private joke that now felt cheap. Her fingers hovered over the phone, then pulled back like it was hot. For the first time in a long time, she didn't want to call Felix. She wanted to rewind. She wanted to find the version of herself who still looked at Jonah with warmth instead of contempt, who didn't need public validation at his expense, who didn't mistake cruelty for humor. But time didn't rewind, and Jonah had just told her, in the plainest words possible, that he'd stopped asking her to change. He was done. Upstairs, she heard a drawer slide open, then shut. Footsteps, a closet door. The soft sound of something being moved, boxes perhaps, or hangers. Jonah wasn't pacing. Jonah wasn't slamming doors. Jonah was doing something worse. Jonah was preparing. Lysandra's mind raced through possibilities. 4:05 could be a meeting with a lawyer, a process server, a public reveal timed to the minute. Felix's wife, Felix's boss, Jonah's parents, her parents, the social circle she'd curated like a stage set, the one she'd fed with carefully selected images of herself, beautiful, desired, above reproach. Because if Jonah was right, if she'd built the case against their marriage one screenshot at a time, then Jonah didn't need to invent anything. He only had to hold up a mirror. Her stomach rolled. She picked up her phone and scrolled through her own profiles, her own story highlights, her own posts. Things she'd laughed at last month suddenly looked cruel. Things she'd thought were harmless suddenly looked like evidence. She imagined someone else, someone neutral, reading the captions, watching the videos, seeing Jonah's face in the background while people laughed at him. She imagined a judge, a mediator, a family member, a colleague. She imagined Felix seeing it too, not as entertainment, but as proof of the kind of woman he'd been flirting with behind his own life. Lysandra's fingers trembled as she started deleting, but she stopped, because she knew something that made her throat tighten. Deleting didn't erase. Screenshots existed. Backups existed. Jonah didn't sound like a man who had just started documenting yesterday. Jonah sounded like a man who had been collecting quietly for months, maybe years, waiting for the moment she pushed him too far. And he'd chosen tomorrow at 4:05. She stared toward the stairs, listening to the calm movement above her, and felt a sudden, sharp realization settle in her chest. Jonah wasn't going to beg anymore. Jonah wasn't going to argue. Jonah was going to execute. And whatever happened at 4:05, it wasn't going to be something she could charm her way out of with tears or apologies or a perfectly curated story. It was going to be something she'd earned. Tuesday arrived grey and drizzling, the kind of weather that matched my mood perfectly. I'd barely slept, turning Jonah's words over and over in my mind. By morning, he was already gone, left early for school without saying goodbye. I tried to focus on work, but every few minutes I found myself checking the time. 4:05 p.m. What could possibly happen at 4:05? Felix noticed my distraction during our lunch meeting. "You seem off today. Everything okay?" Jonah's being weird about something. He keeps talking about 4:05 today like something big is going to happen. Felix laughed. Maybe he's planning a grand romantic gesture, trying to win you back. The thought should have been comforting, but something in my gut told me that wasn't it. At 3:30, I got a text from an unknown number. "Courthouse steps, 4:05, come alone." My hands were shaking as I grabbed my keys. The courthouse was only 10 minutes away, but traffic was heavy in the rain. I kept checking the clock. 3:55, 3:58, 4:02. I pulled into the courthouse parking lot at exactly 4:04 and ran up the steps, my heels clicking against the wet stone. At first, I didn't see anyone. Then a figure emerged from the shadows near the main entrance. Not Jonah, a woman in a business suit carrying a leather briefcase. "Lysandra Vine?" "Yes." "I'm Jennifer Walsh from Walsh & Associates. I have some documents for you." She handed me a thick manila envelope with my name written across the front in Jonah's careful handwriting. "What is this?" "Divorce petition and temporary restraining order. You've been served." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "There's also a custody motion for your daughter Maya and a request for temporary spousal support. Everything's explained in the documents." I tore open the envelope with shaking hands. The first page was official court letterhead. Petition for dissolution of marriage. "This can't be real." "I'm afraid it is. Your husband filed yesterday morning. The temporary orders go into effect immediately." I flipped through the pages, seeing legal terms that made no sense. Irreconcilable differences, custody evaluation, division of assets. At the back of the packet was something that made my blood run cold. Evidence exhibits, dozens of them. Every group chat screenshot, every viral video, every social media post, every photo of Felix and me. All of it printed out, labeled, and submitted to the court as evidence of public humiliation of spouse and conduct detrimental to the marriage. There was even a transcript of my conversation with Marina, where I'd called Jonah boring in bed and said I was ready for some excitement. How did he get all this? I believe someone provided screenshots and video evidence. Everything appears to have been posted publicly on social media platforms. Someone in our group chat had been feeding Jonah everything. Every cruel comment, every mocking message, every moment I thought I was safely venting to friends. "Mrs. Vine, are you all right?" I looked up to see the lawyer watching me with professional concern. "Where is he? Where's Jonah?" "I'm not at liberty to say, but I can tell you that he's requested no direct contact except through attorneys." He can't do this. We have a child together. The custody arrangements are outlined in the temporary orders. You'll have supervised visitation until the court can complete a full evaluation. Supervised? Why supervised? She gestured to the evidence packet. The court is concerned about the impact of your public behavior on the child's well-being. My phone buzzed. A text from Felix. Where are you? Thought we were getting drinks after work. I stared at the message, then at the legal documents in my hands, then back at the message. In that moment, I finally understood what Jonah had been trying to tell me. I had done this to myself. Every screenshot in that evidence packet had come from my own social media accounts. Every humiliating video had been posted by me or Felix with my permission. Every cruel comment about my husband had been typed by my own fingers. I had documented the destruction of my marriage in real time and broadcast it to the world. Mrs. Vine? I looked up. The lawyer was still standing there, rain beginning to spot her glasses. Is there anything else? Actually, yes. She reached into her briefcase and pulled out a second, smaller envelope. Your husband asked me to give you this. Inside was a single sheet of paper with a handwritten note in Jonah's careful script. Lysandra. You said I was a wrinkled prune who embarrassed you. You said you deserved better than a boring husband who couldn't appreciate you. You were right. You do deserve better, and so do I. I hope Felix makes you as happy as you made me miserable. The house is yours until the divorce is final. I've moved out. Maya will understand someday why I had to protect her from watching her parents destroy each other. I'm sorry it came to this, but you made the choice every time you hit post. JPS. Marina was the one sending me screenshots. She was worried about Maya and thought I should know what people were saying about our family. Don't blame her. She was trying to help. I read the note 3 times before the words sank in. Marina. My best friend Marina, who had been encouraging me, laughing at my posts, telling me I deserved better. She had been documenting everything and sending it to Jonah. My phone rang. Marina's name flashed on the screen. Lisa, I just heard. I'm so sorry. You sent him everything. My voice was flat. I had to. You weren't listening to anyone. You were so caught up in the attention that you couldn't see what you were doing to your family. You betrayed me. No, honey, you betrayed yourself. I just made sure Jonah had the evidence he needed to protect himself and Maya. I hung up and stood there in the rain, holding divorce papers and watching my entire life crumble around me. My phone buzzed again. This time it was a notification from Instagram. Felix had posted a new story. I opened it and saw a video of himself at a bar, surrounded by women, with the caption, "Single life looking good." Single life. He'd already moved on, probably before the ink was even dry on my divorce papers. I scrolled through my social media feeds, looking at months of posts that had seemed so fun and liberating at the time. Now I saw them through Jonah's eyes, through Maya's future eyes, through the eyes of a judge who would decide whether I was a fit mother. I saw a woman who had traded her marriage for likes and shares. I saw someone who had humiliated her husband for entertainment. I saw a mother who had put her need for attention above her child's well-being. I saw myself, and for the first time in months, I didn't like what I was looking at. The courthouse steps were empty now, except for me, standing in the rain with legal documents that would dissolve 8 years of marriage. In the distance, I could see people walking by, some of them glancing at me with recognition. The woman from the viral videos, the one who had publicly destroyed her marriage for social media fame. I had gotten exactly what I'd been asking for all along: attention, validation, and freedom from my boring husband, and I had never felt more alone in my life. 6 months later, the divorce was final. Jonah had remarried, a fellow teacher who loved him quietly and privately, without broadcasting their relationship to the world. Maya split her time between us, but I could see in her eyes that she understood who had broken our family. Felix had moved on to his next conquest within weeks of my divorce being finalized. The viral fame faded, the memes became old news, and I was left with nothing but screenshots of my own destruction. I kept one photo on my phone, the anniversary dinner picture that had started it all. In it, Jonah looked tired and sad, while I beamed at Felix with obvious infatuation. Below it was my comment calling my husband a wrinkled prune. I kept it to remind myself of the price of public humiliation. I kept it to remember that some things, once posted, can never be taken back. I kept it to remember that the person who destroyed my marriage wasn't Felix, wasn't the internet, wasn't even Jonah. It was me.